Thank you very much. Let me welcome you to Medstone African Tips. We are still on Business Studies Criterion Term 3 notes, whereby we are under the chapter called Citizenship and Responsibilities. Citizenship and Responsibilities. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about role of citizens. We are going to talk about the rights of citizens. We are going to talk about responsibilities of the citizens. So that is that. So without wasting much time, let us go to the role of citizens. Let us go to the roles of citizens. So here we are on the role of citizens. So we are first going to talk about the meaning of citizenship. We're going to talk about, we're going to first start by the meaning of citizenship. As it says, citizenship can be defined as a legal status and relationship between an individual and a country, whereby each one is entitled to specific legal rights as well as duties. So meaning to say citizenship, like we are saying, is the legal status relationship between individual and country. So it means that a person officially belongs to a particular country and has certain rights and responsibilities. For example, a South African citizen has the right to live in South Africa and access certain services, but also has responsibilities such as obeying the law. That is that. So also, citizenship is gained by meeting legal requirements of national, state, or local government. So a nation grants certain rights as well as privileges to its citizens. So meaning to say, this means that citizenship is officially recognized by the law of country. A citizen is legally recognized as belonging to that country. For example, a person who is legally recognized as a South African citizen can apply for South African identity document or passport. So that is that. So as you can see here, it says if you are born in South Africa, you are automatically South African citizen. That is that. So now let us move on to the rights of citizens. The rights of citizens. As it says, the Bill of Rights applies to every citizen of South Africa. This includes the right to property. This includes the right to property. So like we are talking about the right to property. So right to property, this means that this is the right to own and use property. This is the right to own and use the property such as a house or land within the law. For example, a person can legally own a house in their name. Privacy. Privacy. So the right to keep your personal information, home and private life protected from unnecessary interference. For example, someone cannot enter your home without legal permission. That is that. Respect or dignity. Respect or dignity. Everyone has the right to be treated with respect, not to be humiliated or degraded. So a teacher should not publicly insult or humiliate a learner. That is that. Equity. So equality, we wanted to say equality. So everyone must be treated equally. Here we wanted to say equally. Everyone must be treated equally and should not be unfairly discriminated against. So, for example, a person should not be refused a job because of their race or gender. So that is that. That is equality. Freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and express. The right to express your opinions, ideas while respecting the law and the rights of others. That is that. Information that concerns you. Information that concerns you. So that is the right to access information. That is the right to access information held about you, especially when it affects your rights. So that is that, for example, you can request to see personal information that the organization keeps about you. Freedom of association. Freedom of association. The right to choose your career or um, occupation subject to legal requirements. So that's that. So we're talking about freedom of association, not freedom of choice or trade. So freedom of association, that is the right to join or form groups or organizations or clubs of your choice. That is that. Free choice of trade and occupation. Free freedom of choice of trade or occupation. That is the right to choose your career or occupation subject to legal requirements. Freedom of thought and religion. Freedom of thought and religion. That is the right to have your own beliefs, thoughts, and religion. So a person may choose to practice Christianity. Some they can go to Islam and other religions. Freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. Freedom of movement means that the right to move freely within South Africa and choose where you want to live. A person can move from Johannesburg to Cape Town to find a job. That is freedom of movement. Healthcare, food, water, and social assistance. So this means people have rights to access basic services, social support provided by law. A person may access public healthcare at government clinic. So that is that. So now we have fair labor practice. Fair labor practice. So workers have the right to fair treatment. They have a right to fair treatment and reasonable working conditions. So an employer cannot unfairly dismiss a worker without following proper procedures. Education and training are universal right to basic education. So this shows that this one is all about everyone has the right to basic education and should have opportunities to learn and develop skills. Safety or security or protection or life. So this means that everyone has a right to be protected from violence, harm, and threats to their life. That is that. Access to labor court and institutions. Access to labor court and institutions. Workers use legal institutions to resolve unfair treatment, uh, to resolve unfair treatment and workplace disputes. That is that. A freedom of from slavery, servitude, and forced labor. So this symbol says no person may be treated as a slave or forced to work against their will. The right to vote. So the symbol says eligible citizens have the right to participate in elections and choose their representatives. Freedom to choose your own language or participate in your own cultural life. So this symbol says people have right to use their language and practice and enjoy their culture. That is that. So now we come to responsibilities of citizens. Responsibilities of citizens. As it says, the South African citizens are required to exercise their rights in a responsible manner. Every right comes with responsibility. Responsible people know what their rights are and respect the rights of others. Being responsible means you care about other people's rights. So that is that being responsible citizen means using your rights properly while respecting the rights of other people. That is in short what it means. So the following are some of the rights and responsibility of the citizens. So like we are going to have rights and responsibilities. So the first one says freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and expression. So this means you may express your opinions, but you must avoid hate speech, spreading or insulting others. Yes, for example, you can disagree with someone's opinion, but you should explain your view respectfully instead of insulting them. That is that. Equality. You must treat everyone equally and fairly, regardless of their differences. You should give all learners an equal opportunity to participate in a group activity. Respect and dignity. You must treat other people with respect and dignity and communicate with them politely. That is that. You should greet people warmly, speak to teachers, uh, friends, and community members in a very good manner. Then education. Education. This simple says with education, we have the responsibility to attend school regularly and learn and work hard. That is that. Then we have safety, security, and protection of life. Safety, security, and protection of life. So you must not hurt, bully, or intimidate others. Should solve disagreements peacefully. Own property. So with own property, that means you must respect other people's property and help protect both private as well as uh, public property. Freedom of thought and religion. You must um, respect other people's beliefs, opinions, even when you disagree with them. If you are a friend follows different religion, you should respect their beliefs instead of making fun of making fun of them. That is that. So now let us come to responsibilities now. Let us come to responsibilities. So we're going to be on responsibilities. So we can see what we have already talked about. It's the same, like rights, freedom of speech, responsibility, avoid hate speech, spreading lies, and stuff like that. Equality, treat everyone personally and equally and fairly. Respect and dignity. That is when you treat people with respect and dignity, including greeting them warmly and speaking to them continuously. Education, that is when you attend school regularly to learn and to work hard. And the safety and security and protection of life, that is when you have said not hitting, bullying, or intimidating others. Solve any conflict in a peaceful manner. So we've already said all this. Um, so thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.